we continue our 2024 preview by studio with Universal, the silent but deadly studio. That's right. While everyone's always focused on the drama surrounding Disney and Warner Brothers, Universal just keeps chugging along, making money. Ka-ching! But while fans used to feel that Warner Brothers was the Disney alternative, more and more Universal is seen in that position. A position they are putting themselves in intentionally. So they're becoming a little less silent. They're throwing down the gauntlet, I think because they smell blood in the water. Is it smell or taste blood in the water? Either way, they feel they've got Disney on the run and they're making the most of it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. 2023 was a pretty banner year for Universal. Will it continue? So in fact, speaking of Universal versus Disney, who has two animation studios like Disney? Who has theme parks like Disney? It ain't Warner Brothers, it's Universal. And when a number of people turned on Disney parks in Florida due to political reasons and or skyrocketing prices, many touted Universal as the new premier Florida destination. And Universal is building, because again, they feel they have Disney on the run, so they're building a brand new, massive additional theme park in Florida, Epic Universe, set to open in late 2025. And when the announcement was made this week, sure enough, a lot of people on social media were like, Disney could never. And now, again, who wins in these entertainment wars? Well, I used to think that we did, but they're getting pretty toxic. All right, so anyway, and now Universal is also moving ahead with live action adaptations of their animated movies, just like Disney does. First up, How to Train Your Dragon, an IP developed by Mr. Chris Sanders, who left Disney after a creative blow-up post Lilo and Stitch. Now, Sanders isn't the only talent to find sanctuary at Universal. Long home to Steven Spielberg. In fact, Steven Spielberg helped build Universal. In name only, he's like an advisor on the theme parks, but he gets a percentage of the theme park revenue every year. I mean, talk about making bank. That's Steven Spielberg as well. But Universal recently landed who many younger moviegoers feel is the new premier filmmaker over Spielberg. That's right, Christopher Nolan. And after all the money and awards that Universal has gotten Nolan for Oppenheimer, Warner Brothers could never. They've made all of Nolan's dreams come true. While he hasn't announced his next film, don't be surprised if it's for Universal, unless it's James Bond. But still, I don't know if Prime Video, Amazon, MGM would need a distribution partner for that, but maybe Nolan would suggest Universal. Universal's Illumination, speaking of partnerships, also has a very lucrative partnership with Nintendo. Now, Sony got the live-action Zelda movie, but word is that Nintendo plans to expand the animated Super Mario universe with Illumination. So there's going to be more of those movies coming. Plus, Universal has a deal with Nintendo for theme parks, just like they do with Warner Brothers for Harry Potter. That's so interesting. Disney brought over, of course, some of the Fox brand. Well, before they actually purchased Avatar, that's interesting. Before Disney purchased Fox, they made that deal for the Avatar theme parks, and then they consolidated and become one actual company. Now, Universal's not going to buy Nintendo, but I do find that Warner Brothers relationship very interesting. Now, on that note, is there no drama at Universal at all? Well, the only gossip at Universal right now is whether or not they do plan to acquire Warner Brothers when Zazie puts it on the chopping block, on the market in April. The earliest Zazie can do that is April of this year. Universal acquiring Warner Brothers has been Hollywood gossip since before AT&T purchased it. When AT&T purchased Warner Brothers, many had thought that Universal might make that purchase instead. But now, 2 purchases later, Comcast CEO Brian Roberts recently said he insisted that he loves the company the way it is. He loves the company we have. Now, that's not a flat no, but Roberts, what he means by that is that Universal, he feels, doesn't need to buy Warner Brothers. So the deal would have to be really attractive to get them in play. And as we know, Zazie ain't against chopping stuff up for smaller sales. So, this could be an a la carte purchase from NBC, Comcast, Universal. However, while Roberts might love Universal the way it is, how does Wall Street feel? How do shareholders feel? Remember, thanks to Netflix and then Disney, which acquired Fox to be able to be the same size as Netflix and be competitive, well, that means that all Hollywood studios are going to have to eventually be as massive as those two if they also want to be able to compete. And quite frankly, no matter how Brian Roberts feels, Universal, as it currently is, the company that he has, is not big enough to be on the same level. It's also, though, one of the more traditional studios. And while Disney mulls selling off ABC and has gone all in on Disney Plus, slightly to their own detriment, Paramount, speaking of networks, Paramount, by the way, I want to point out, has the very successful CBS. Although, if Warner Brothers and Paramount merge, Universal doesn't need two networks. Maybe that's partially what Brian Roberts is talking about. Maybe he wouldn't be interested in the whole company, but he would, be interested in parts, as he's going to sell it for parts. But NBC is the network is a very successful part of Comcast, NBC Universal. And Comcast, by the way, is a cable company. So of course they're never going to want to go all in on streaming the way that Disney has. So NBC, Comcast, Universal is very, very much slanted towards, I guess, what you would call analog, right? Because they're not only own a very successful network. I think NBC still does quite well, but they're still very much a part of the conversation. But Comcast again is a cable company. Universal is a trailblazer when it comes to the release strategy, using all the different assets that they have. And during the pandemic, it was Universal that found a way to make the most of theatrical, digital, and streaming, with a flexible plan that allows them to release a variety of movies, big and small, every year. And the ones that don't connect in theaters simply start their post-theatrical life sooner. They've made billions of dollars doing this. And that doesn't mean, though, that Universal doesn't have a strong theatrical performance. Quite the opposite, in fact. They're firing on all cylinders. Because in 2023, they were the first studio in years to outgross Disney at the box office for the year. So that was an incredible feat that they did with this layered and tiered strategy. In 2024, Universal is releasing 13 movies, almost double Disney's 2024 slate, and even a few more than Warner Brothers' slate of approximately 11 movies. They're close to the same there, though. So let's take a look, starting with Universal's heavy hitters. Universal has 3 potential live-action box office behemoths this year. We'll talk about animation separately. The Fall Guy, Twisters, and Wicked Part 1. Yeah, this slate is pretty stacked. I think it's pretty stacked. Gladiator 2, Universal is releasing that, I believe, internationally. But I think that this is pretty good. This is I don't see like a breakout like Super Mario Brothers, right? Although we haven't gotten to animation yet. I'm curious what you think of Universal's slate. But if all these 3 movies hit, Universal will be very happy. And there's a chance that they could. So when Disney was forced to abandon their summer kickoff release date for Deadpool 3, who swooped in and picked it up? Universal. Again, Universal, very quiet, but then who did it? Of course, it was Universal. And they've got Ryan Gosling, hot off of Ken. Can Gosling keep that Kenergy going? And fittingly, this is another big picture romantic comedy, with Gosling this time starring opposite Emily Blunt for director David Leitch. The only problem is that while this trio sometimes delivers, sometimes they do not. So which group does the Fall Guy fall into? It's hard to tell, I think, right now. And is this movie big enough to kick off the summer movie season? I mean, just because you open a movie at the beginning of the summer does not mean it's worthy. I think The Fall Guy looks great, by the way, but I don't know if it's like a May 3rd movie. Then there's Twisters. Maybe they should have put Twisters here, and they should have put The Fall Guy on Twisters' date instead. But this is what we're doing. Here we have a very big cast, so hopefully that means there are some red shirts in here. We gotta have high stakes, right? Can Universal turn Twister into a franchise almost 30 years later? Directed by the guy who did Minari. Is this gonna be a really stripped down, like intellectual blockbuster? I mean, maybe he can do it. I'd be thrilled if he can, but it's not who you would think they would choose to direct. Sometimes they go with the cinematographer of a lot of action movies, and then maybe you feel it's a good idea. This is a very interesting choice. Twister is a strong IP, though. You would think it would be tough to mess it up. The 1996 film was the second biggest of the year, in fact, behind Independence Day. What a year for movies. Why has it taken Hollywood so long to make a sequel? It's even to some degree kind of switched studios a little bit. The first was domestically released by Warner Brothers. But Glenn Powell's career is on fire right now, and that's the new Superman right there. In fact, there's a lot of hot up-and-coming talent here, so Universal might be brilliant in that they signed all of these actors right before their prices went up. Their prices haven't even gone up quite yet. Maybe Powell and Corn Sweat, but I think everybody else is on the verge of having their prices go up, and Twisters could help. And speaking of incredible casts, Wicked is definitely aimed at the musical theater crowd, but will it have the needed crossover appeal for such an expensive production? Broadway's Wicked is the original Frozen, even down to Idina Menzel. But just because something was first, it doesn't mean it will do as well as the copies. Just ask John Carter. John Carter was a good movie. I mean, it wasn't like an amazing movie, but it was really solid. And really, of course, who would choose out of everyone that you could get to direct this in Hollywood or even on Broadway? I mean, they could have gone to a lot. I mean, speaking of looking for directors, there were a lot of interesting places they could go. But instead, Universal picked John M. Chu, who's really hit or miss. Then with the two leads, Universal and Chu prioritized singing ability over even like some box office draw. It's like these Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are very risky from an acting perspective, but they sure can sing. So hopefully that will be enough. And these sets do look freaking amazing. Clearly, Universal has thrown money at Wicked, which will release in 2 parts for 2 consecutive holiday seasons. There's not going to be a big break in between. It could very well be the new Frozen or the new Cats. I still think, we haven't even seen a trailer for that. I'm scared, but it could make so much money. As for Universal's 2 animation houses, both are delivering strong sequels this year. DreamWorks Animation has Kung Fu Panda 4, while Illumination Entertainment has Despicable Me 4. Look how that lined up. That's beautiful. 2 4s. Despicable Me is a $1 billion franchise these days. Even if you can't understand it, it doesn't matter. They consistently make $1 billion. And they have July 4th locked down. Disney Animation typically releases for Thanksgiving. Despicable Me movies come out for the 4th of July holiday weekend. Well, Kung Fu Panda ain't too shabby either at the box office. That movie comes out in early March, by the way, and there are no other animated movies until Sony's Garfield in late May. So that's like 3 months where Kung Fu Panda 4 is the only family animated movie in theaters. That's incredible. But wait, DreamWorks has yet another movie set for this year, The Wild Robot from Mr. Chris Sanders. His animation track record at Disney and after is pretty freaking stellar. That was a loss for Disney to not have him anymore. He is returning to do the voice for Stitch, though, in the live-action Disney Plus movie, which I think is supposed to come out this year. All right, unless it just looks so awful. They're like, what Stitch movie? We didn't make one of those. All right, now let's take a look at some of Universal's smaller gambles that could do well in theaters, but might end up doing the big business on digital and streaming. And there ain't no shame in that. Bank is bank. Although it's not so great for some people's careers. But anyway, Matthew Vaughn's Argylle hits theaters this very weekend, which seems very similar to his own Kingsman and may or may not star Henry Cavill. Rumor has it most of the movie's scenes focus on Bryce Dallas Howard and Sam Rockwell, who I adore, but I don't know how many other people do. And then there's surprise movie Monkey Man, Dev Patel's directorial debut, which looks incredible. Producer Jordan Peele and Universal rescued this from a Netflix release. Sure, it looks a little derivative of John Wick, but we love that type of movie, and this looks extremely well done in that regard. And it also, I think, has some strong social commentary. To me, this is a lot like John Wick meets Joker, and that could be a potent combination. And everybody's been waiting for Dev Patel to blow up, his chance to blow up as a star, and this might be it. And he did it for himself. Good for you, Dev Patel. Next, every studio is in the horror space these days, and Universal is no exception, as they are home to none other than Mr. Jason Blum. This is a very formal video. We're calling everybody Mr. today. Blum has 2 films set for Universal this year. Speak No Evil, a remake of the Danish film starring James McAvoy, and a mystery film set for mid-September. Look at Universal, announcing movies at the last minute. Nobody even knew Monkey Man existed until they dropped the trailer a week or so ago. It's crazy. And they have 1 more mystery film set for the year. This is nuts. It's 2024 and we still don't know the full slate. But hey, it was a very cool Monkey Man announcement, so I don't have any problem with these surprise movies. It might even become a new thing. And kudos to Universal for being able to keep this stuff a secret. Again, it's very quiet over there. Scoopers don't even pay attention. Universal has landed the Scream directors as well, Mr. Scream directors, and their Radio Silence company. And they have their own original horror film, Abigail, set for this spring. Radio Silence brought former Scream star Melissa Barrera over with them, and it will be interesting to see if her legion of loyal social media fans who have vowed to boycott the Scream franchise after she was fired, if they'll throw their support behind this movie. This tiny dancer vampire flick has a couple of fan favorites. Dan Stevens, Catherine Newton, Giancarlo. He's definitely a Mr. Giancarlo Esposito. And Abigail herself, that's the little girl from Netflix's Matilda. It would be cooler if she was the little girl from Megan, but this is fine. Which, by the way, was a Blum movie for Universal. Megan 2.0 comes out 2025. There's also Wolfman. Boy, they just recast this recently. They are racing to get this movie done, with James Wan's former creative partner Lee Whannell seeing if he can successfully modernize another Universal monster. I think Lee Whannell is extremely talented, but I don't know how many stripped-down movies like this he can make. We'll see. This was supposed to be Ryan Gosling. Benicio del Toro already howled and failed, but now it's Christopher Abbott? Whew! That is so low down the casting list. They're like, we had to make up a new casting list. I mean, it's just incredible. I don't know. He's just coming off of Poor Things. Thankfully, Ozark's Julia Garner is also starring. Finally, Universal, as I said, has another mystery movie left. They're holding on to November 1st for as yet to be announced event film. Now, if you're still holding on to a date this late, it means you're probably going to use it. So what is the mystery? This is very exciting because November 1st is a very good release date. What could it be? Jordan Peele's new movie hasn't even started shooting yet because of delays from the strikes. So what else is there? I looked at what Universal's working on and I didn't see anything. Monkey Man was originally called an untitled event film as well with their slate. So let's hope they have a surprise up their other sleeve of the same caliber for 2024. I'm very curious. I like this. I like this surprise idea. I think it's a good idea. And if they can get away with it, but if the more they do it, the more scoopers might start to pay attention to Universal. What do you think of Universal's 2024 slate? And can they continue to dominate as the other studios drown in drama? Which of these movies will you see in theaters? And which do you hope Universal fast tracks to streaming, to digital and streaming? Plus, do you want to see Universal acquire Warner Brothers or parts of Warner Brothers? And do you feel that Universal is the new alternative to Disney? What are your thoughts? I know a lot of you have very strong thoughts on Universal, so I'm curious to hear them. Share them down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.